time, this is something Ron and I have been talking about. My gosh, Ashley Banfield on News Nation had an incredible interview with Kyle Rittenhouse, and it wasn't just kind of one of those quick cable news interviews. It was one of those long cable news interviews. One of those, I mean, it was extensive. I feel like she came very prepared and asked some very pointed questions.
Well, Ashley, as we know, is a career journalist who's been in situations to hold people accountable and press and ask those difficult questions. I look at what's happened this week, first with the verdict, then his sit-down interview with Tucker Carlson, now this interview with Ashley Banfield, and it really is as much a commentary on where our media is and where journalism is right now, because if you were to compare the two interviews, Tucker Carlson was almost laying it out like, we're on your side, this is a platform for you to just explain more about how you're feeling. And Ashley, I think, really struck a balance of, tell us your story, but let me ask you some of those questions that people are at home are wondering about, where you are, what your state of mind was then, what your state of mind is now. And I think those are all important things to delve into, because we all need to learn something from this.
I agree there's a difference between the two interviews. I think where I disagree is I look at Ashley as a journalist, and I don't look at Tucker Carlson as a journalist. I would never,
you don't.
No, I would never watch
But those viewers on Fox News do.
They shouldn't. That's not what he does. He's an opinion person. I mean, it's known. I think when I watch Ashley, I have an expectation that she's going to do a fair interview. You're not going to feel a lot of emotion from her unless it's perhaps some empathy for an obvious tragedy or something like that. When I watch Tucker Carlson, I'm expecting for his opinion to be laced through it, because I look at him as a comic.
Well, I appreciate that about you, but there are people who I know who will espouse whatever Tucker Carlson's point of view is as if it's based in fact.
I see what you're saying.
And it's not. So what he's doing is he's making millions of dollars espousing information that's incorrect and leading people to believe that his point of view is based in fact, and in many cases it's not, it's conjecture. But in any case, that's a conversation we could have day in and day out.
I know.
But it's Kyle Rittenhouse who really has had two different opportunities to express himself, and this was the moment during this that I thought Ashley asked a question that I think is on everyone's mind. Do you regret what happened that night? Let's take a listen here.
But looking back on it, you regret being there that night?
I wouldn't say I regret. I regret going there. I don't regret defending myself. I regret making the decision to go there. But what I'm trying to say is, if I could go back, I would not have gone there.
So he doesn't regret what he calls self-defense, but he kind of wishes he didn't show up that day. Was that kind of how you took that?
Yeah, he recognizes that had he not gone, he wouldn't have been in a situation to have to make a decision about that. And, this jury, there are jury members who may not have believed his intentions for going there. They may not have liked him, but they were instructed to make a decision based on the laws of our land. And the law is, you judge the situation by the moment, and he did have a right to be there and to be armed. Whether he went there with the right intentions didn't factor into their decision. What factored in was, here's the law which says in this moment, were you in grave danger and did you have the right, was the law on your side to fire that gun? And as the law states, the answer to that is yes, and that's what led to the acquittal.
What I found during this time, interesting with Ashley's interview as we kind of look forward on this story, is I did make the assumption that he had perhaps some political leanings or some political opinions or affiliations based on some of the coverage. According to him, this was I put forth by his attorneys. I found his answer to the question whether he plans to pursue some of these internship opportunities, some of these political opportunities, to be very interesting. Here's that part of the interview.
I do not plan on accepting any internships. I don't want to get involved in politics at all. I know nothing about it, and thank everybody for their support, but I'm good. Thank you. I don't have any interest in that, because to me this case is about the right to self-defense, not where you fall left or right.
And we showed that photo of the three Republican congressmen, Matt Gaetz being the first among them, Madison Cawthorn, Paul Gosar, all saying that they one of them said they would arm wrestle with the other over who was going to have first dibs on him as an intern. I find that interesting that each of them wants to attach themselves to him and provide for him opportunities and a platform, which, again, seems to condone the behavior and reward the behavior. And I say behavior, it was an act, right, but he's admitting, Kyle Rittenhouse, in hindsight, he shouldn't have gone. So in that, will anybody who would be inspired to put themselves in the center of a protest think twice? Because up until this point, if you looked online, there were a lot of people saying, this proves we have a right to be there. This proves we should all arm up and we should all get involved when our cities are burning. And I feel like what Kyle Rittenhouse is now saying is, I made a mistake there in going in the first place.
In going in the first place. So he says he's considering changing his name. He says he's going to try to lose some weight, change what he looks like a little bit, probably move to a different town, and sort of distance himself from the whole situation. He does not want this to be his life's platform. And he seemed very frustrated that groups were attaching themselves to him.
Yeah,
like he said, I'm not a cause guy. I don't want any part of this.
And you could make the case that those congressmen are doing that as well.
Oh, totally.
And in this world, yeah, they are. And in this world, how anonymous can you be? What will his life look like from this point forward? And will any more of these interviews be given? Or has he said to himself, I've given 2 interviews, I've answered questions from 2 different networks, and will that be the end of it? We shall see.